Alright guys, here's another video. This is a rectangular prism net, and we're going to actually be working on surface area. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a net, and then I'm going to have it as a three-dimensional figure. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for congruent shapes that I have. I'm just going to kind of color code my congruent shapes here, so that we can see what we're dealing with. Alright, now that I can see my congruent shapes, this will be somewhat easy. Now the one thing that we all need to remember is we have the area formula. Area will always equal length times width, and you will see it written different ways. Area is L times W. Sometimes you'll see it, with your algebraic way, LW. Sometimes you will see it LW this way. Just know that they are commutative. Works all the same. So once I know this, I can start to get to work. Rectangular prisms, finding surface area, it takes time. That's all it is. It just takes time to do. One of the easiest ways is to sometimes cover and just focus in on certain shapes. I see that I have a rectangle up top in yellow. I see I have a length and I have a width. So for my yellow, which would be my rectangle here, I would have 8 inches times 4 inches, and that would give me a grand total of 32 inches squared. Now the thing about it is I've got 2 of these, but I'll come back to this at the end. I'm just going to kind of underline this as yellow. Now I'm going to focus in on my green. If I cover with my hand, I already see that I have a length and a width for my green. So this area would be 10 inches times 4 inches. So my area should be 40 inches squared. And that will be for my green, 40 inches squared. Now I need to focus in on one of my blue ones. Well, I'm going to focus in over here because I already see a width of this blue rectangle. Knowing what I've known from my other chapters and ideas of parallel lines, if this is 10 inches, this looks like that this is parallel to this line segment. So that should be
10 inches.
10 inches, which in turn should be parallel to this, which is
10 inches.
10 inches, which should be parallel to this,
10 inches.
which would lead me to
10 inches.
Hooray! Now I cover with my hand. I focus just on this one rectangle, and I see I have my width and my length. My area will be 10 inches times 8 inches, which would give me a grand total of 80 inches squared. I will color code this with blue. Now, we have 2 of each. Now to save work, this is something that I think is quite simple. I'm going to take my 32 inches, my 40 inches, and my 80 inches. So basically I'm taking, as if I cover my hands, I'm basically taking those 3 rectangles. But notice, if I cover up again, I've got 3 more rectangles. If I add my 32 inches squared, my 40 inches squared, and my 80 inches squared, I will get a grand total of 152 inches squared. Now this number will only represent either these 3 or those 3. Now since we have 2 of each, if I quickly just multiply by 2 at the end, my grand total for surface area should be 304 inches squared for the surface area. Now, if we were to put this prism together, it would look like this. It would look like this. Now, those of you at home who are watching, it may not look like it's drawn to scale, and that's okay. But this is what we would be looking at. I'll pull this back out. Here it is as a net. Here it is as a three-dimensional figure. Now, if I want to find the surface area of this, one thing that we talked about in class is that I'm just going to maybe focus in and think, okay, if I've got 8 inches here, that actually means I have 8 inches here and 8 inches up here, because these will be parallel to each other. If I've got 4 inches here, that means I've got 4 inches here, which means I have 4 inches here. And if I have 10 inches here, that means I've got 10 inches here and 10 inches here. If you break them apart and just kind of look, you see your length times width. You see your length times width. And then you'll see, your length times width. Same rules apply. If I have area as length times width, I will look at my blue and I have 10 inches times 8 inches, which will give me 80 inches squared. If I take a look at my green, I have 10 inches times 4 inches, which would give me 40 inches squared. And if I look at my yellow, I have 8 inches times 4 inches, which would give me 32 inches squared. Take my 3, add them together, and as we saw before, that will give us 152 inches squared. But I only see the front side of this figure, so I just need to double it for the back side, so times 2, and I will still end up with 304 inches squared for my surface area.